to you live from the Coast to Coast World Headquarters right here in Los Angeles, California, the day after Thanksgiving. All right. It's going to be a great night tonight. And I hope that all of you spent time with your family, friends yesterday on Thanksgiving, and now you're going to spend it with us right here tonight on Coast to Coast. And I want to jump off and say that, tonight's guest is Alfred Webre, and I have been a fan of Alfred's for quite a long time. And tonight, we're going to take a tour through the new science of the Omniverse, his new book, its spiritual and physical dimensions, and its unmeasurable amounts of intelligent civilizations that are out there, not only in our galaxy, but this universe of ours. The book is incredible. I have it here in the studio. I've been reading it all week. And Alfred, he is one of the world's leading figures in exopolitics. We're going to talk about that tonight, too, as well. He's the international director of the Institute for Cooperation in Space. We're going to talk about that. But we're going to jump into all of my favorite subjects that I just love to talk about and learn about. I'm talking about time travel. I'm talking about the colony on Mars, interdimensional beings, advanced alien technology. Tonight, we're going to jump in feet first with Alfred Webre. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'm sitting in for George Norrie tonight, and he's at home with family, and tonight it's Dan and I and G here in the studio. It's going to be a great night tonight. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Alfred Webre, when we come back right after this. Welcome back to Coast AM. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, sitting in tonight for George Norrie. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. And let's get straight to it. I'm excited. Alfred Webre is one of the leading experts in exopolitics and is the international director of the Institute for Cooperation in Space. He has worked as a futurist at the Stanford Research Institute, and in 1977 designed a proposed Carter White House extraterrestrial communication study. As the chairman of the board of advisors of the Mars Anomaly Research Society, he has championed the cause to have the United States government disclose its secret documents pertaining to Mars. His new book is The Omniverse, Trans-Dimensional Intelligence, Time Travel, the Afterlife, and the Secret Colony on Mars. And I would like to welcome to Coast, Mr. Alfred Webre. Alfred, how are you on this Thanksgiving post-celebration?
Jimmy, I'm great, and it's a really clear, crisp night in Vancouver, Canada, and I want to wish Thanksgiving wishes to you and to all of the listening audience, and also to my dear colleague, Dr. Carol Rosin, who is the director of the Institute for Cooperation in Space. I was the international director for the Institute for Cooperation in Space for a long time, and we championed the Space Preservation Treaty. U.S. Congressman Dennis Kucinich introduced it into the House of Representatives of the U.S. Congress, and we had presidents around the world, notably the president of Ecuador, who wanted to pull together a treaty conference in South America, bringing together all of the countries of the planet, including China and Russia, who want to ban space-based weapons. It's the same thing as we did at the treaty conference for the landmines. And that has had many spin-offs, including a local city council in California that now has adopted the Space Preservation Act, H.R. 2977, which prohibits HAARP and other weapons from beaming remote electromagnetic influencing down into their city. So we've had all sorts of effects over this decade.
Well, let me jump in for a second, Alfred, and for our audience, because I've been a fan of yours like forever. And
oh, well, thank you.
Let's back up for a second, because with your experience with the EPA out of New York, experience as a lawyer and an attorney, exopolitics came forward for you, and you helped coin the term. But let's kind of start there before we jump into the Omniverse. And what is
Sure.
a clean and clear definition of exopolitics, and why is it so important to our audience?
Very good question, and thank you. By the way, Exopolitics was nominated for Word of the Year of 2005, and not bad for a word that was coined only 5 years earlier in 2001 with the publication of my book, Exopolitics. But a very brief definition of exopolitics, and exopolitics is a social science like anthropology, and it's in its infancy now, so there are many definitions. The one that I prefer is exopolitics is the study of relations among intelligent civilizations in the multiverse. Now, what the multiverse means is the collection of all of the universes that exist. And the multiverse was a term that was coined notably by the American philosopher, psychologist, and novelist William James in 1895 to signify the totality of all the universes. And we can get in later into the definition of what a universe is, what a multiverse is, and what the latest scientific estimate is of the number of universes in the multiverse, which I think, to quote the scientists, is, quote, humongous, end of quote.
Is it important for the UN to get involved, to maybe have an exopolitics ambassador, if you will?
That's another key question. You're really asking all of the key questions here. And the answer is yes and no. On the yes side, the answer is most definitely yes, because the way that our planet can relate to civilizations from other life-bearing planets or spacefaring civilizations that might be based, say, in a space world of their own construction, or interdimensional civilizations, is from a planetary point of view. And when you deal from a planetary point of view, that's above the nation state. And so all of the treaties, all of the international treaties, like the 1967 UN Outer Space Treaty that you'll find, which, 100 plus nations have signed and ratified, is basically the law of our solar system from the terrestrial point of view, actually the law of our cosmos from the terrestrial point of view, which the US is violating, but we'll get into that later. And so you need the United Nations from that point of view. The no part is this, is that the fix is in until we get true United Nations reform. Because right now, the United Nations has what I would call an administrative bottleneck, and that's known as the Security Council, where you have the 5 founding members, only they were the members in a power relationship that was expressed in 1945. And now all of that has changed, and we're not a unipolar world, we're not a bipolar world, we're a multipolar world. So the problem with the UN is that the UK, which is this little island that's wagging a huge dog because of its queen that owns 26% of the land surface of the planet and has a huge underground, and some people say, shall we call it ritual, demonic kind of persona. And, that's proven. You've got the UK, the US, you've got Russia, you've got China, and you've got France. Now, line them up now. Those aren't exactly all the world's leading powers. I mean, BRICS will knock France out of the park, right, on any given day, and maybe even the UK. So what we're waiting for is for UN reform, which will begin to reflect our multipolar world, put more power into the General Assembly so it's more say, of a legislative body, one member, one vote. And I personally am a fan of direct digital democracy. If we can have the internet security, which we do have, that the U.S. fights its wars, where its drones are located, its drone operators are located in Tampa, Florida, and they're taking out, you know, targets in somewhere in the Middle East. There's a lot of security there. So what we can do is take that technology, swords into plowshares, turn it around so that everybody on the planet has a little device that they have, and at the municipal, at the provincial or state, at the national, at the international level, we don't need city councils anymore. We don't need state legislatures anymore. We don't need Congresses anymore. We don't need United Nations anymore. The citizens of the world vote up and down on the laws, and then we have governments that are like, you know, city departments that pick up the garbage and keep the oceans clean. So that's, I think, the world that we're traveling toward. Hopefully it will be within my lifetime and yours, but all of that is technologically and politically feasible and reachable, and it's only what we call the matrix powers and the powers that be, and those people who have a vested interest in creating war, disease, crime, and poverty, which is their kind of gross world product, emphasis on gross, that we can transform this world. And what my book, The Omniverse, is about is nailing down in replicable scientific evidence with legal evidence as well, a model of the Omniverse to show that we on this planet, sure, we're on an impacted planet in an impacted sector of the galaxy. It's been that way for about 200,000 years. Some people say 1,000,000 years, but things can shift now and they're ready to flip. And we are now prepared as a society, and the Omniverse and knowledge of the Omniverse is part of the kind of the kindergarten to first grade lessons for all citizens to understand what civic duties are as we now prepare to enter organized universe society.
Well said, and we're going to get into the Omniverse right after the break, and we're going to go through the entire book. It's an amazing read, but I think to set it up, your first book, Exopolitics, they bleed into each other. And
right.
I want to get inside your head for a second. When you wrote Exopolitics, what was it? There was an epiphany there, Alfred. Something snapped inside of you, and that light bulb went off. What was it that made you realize the need for Exopolitics?
Wow, you really know how to ask questions, Jimmy. I just have to compliment you. I mean, this is really awesome. And there are a couple of levels that I would like to address the response to, because the Exopolitics is an unusual work. I've been told by a gentleman who was a CIA DARPA chrononaut. That means a time traveler. He's actually been a guest on Coast a number of times. He's a fellow attorney named Andrew D. Bishago. And Andy Bishago actually met me. I've known Andy face-to-face in person now for 15 years. We met in the year 2000. But Andy Bishago met me for the first time by proxy in the form of my book, Exopolitics, which he saw in 1971. And the reason he saw a physical copy of that book in 1971 was that he was a project participant in DARPA and CIA's Project Pegasus, which was their secret time travel and teleportation project. And one day he was taken aside, two other people, his father, who was kind of his handler, I would call it, or patron within the Project Pegasus, took him aside, opened up one of the briefcases that they hold what they call classified time travel materials. That is, materials where the US CIA or DARPA had gone into the future, acquired materials from the future and brought it back to the present, then 1971. And he plunked it out on a table, and there was a copy of Exopolitics by Alfred Lambremont Webre. And so that was 1971. At the time, I was general counsel of the Environmental Protection Administration of the city of New York. Now, we know that our universe is a time-space hologram, and that's composed of multiple timelines. So let's take one of those timelines and let's fast forward from 1971 up to 1999, where I'm sitting in my office. Jerry DiStefano Weber, PhD, my soulmate and spouse, and I had moved to Vancouver, Canada. And we were living in the Kitsilano area. And you asked the question, how did Exopolitics come about? Well, it was 1999, and I sat down and I wrote a couple of books very quickly, and then there was one book I knew that was being birthed. Now, if I think about it, who knows if I was not telepathically accessing the timeline in which Exopolitics had already been written and time traveled back to 1971, if you follow my drift. Because all of a sudden now...
Did you jump to that conclusion early on? That's an interesting revelation.
No, I had no idea. I remember sitting in my office there on York Avenue across from this beautiful red schoolhouse. They used to say, gee, this red schoolhouse is beautiful because all the kids used to come out at recreation and play, games and stuff. And I said, I feel like I'm sort of teaching, it was like a metaphor for teaching the earth the basics about Earth's position in the rest of universe society. So I had a great time with this. And what I did basically in writing the book Exopolitics was that I had gotten into this field in 1973, in January of 1973, because toward the end of 1972, when I was in the EPA, my boss, Mayor John Lindsay of New York, decided he wanted to run for US president. And my immediate boss, Jerry Kretschmer, who was the EPA administrator, decided that he wanted to run for mayor of New York. So they were both getting into politics, and I really didn't want to go that way. And so I had begun reading books like Psychic Discoveries Behind the Iron Curtain, The Morning of the Magicians, and through my cousin, who was a therapist at the Karen Horney Institute, I put out, feelers, and I linked up with a gentleman, Philip H. Liss, Professor Philip H. Liss, PhD, who was an experimental psychologist and professor at Rutgers University. He was also an expert in parapsychology and in extraterrestrial affairs. So he and I met on the 7th of January, 1973, and we hit it off, and we formed an intellectual partnership. And I was a very quick study, and I then had about a 6-month, I left my job at the EPA. I jumped in, full feet into the multidimensional world and did a very, very quick study for about 6 months, both on parapsychology and in the UFO ET area. At the time, we were, going to conferences on the radio, meeting up with people like Uri Geller, people like that, because that summer I wrote my first book. This is the summer of '73, which Bill Targ, who was the editor of G.P. Putnam's, bought and published as The Age of Cataclysm.
Okay, well, let me jump in right there, Alfred,
Yeah.
and we'll pick it up on the backside. Tonight, Alfred Webre is with us, and his book, The Omniverse, reveals the key travel and communication technologies of the Omniverse: time travel, teleportation, and telepathy. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, and this is Coast to Coast AM. Welcome back to Coast AM. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, and tonight we have Alfred Webre, and his new book is The Omniverse: Trans-Dimensional Intelligence, Time Travel, the Afterlife, and the Secret Colony on Mars. Now, Alfred, right before the break, we were working on the definition of exopolitics and how I feel that the two bleed completely together and function together right into the new book. And now we're at that stage. What is the Omniverse?
Right. Yeah. You know, actually, it turns out that the formula or the equation, you know, like E = MC squared, is so simple. It's just an utterly simple equation. You know, as time slows down, mass increases. Well, let's jump over to the Omniverse. The Omniverse equals the multiverse. In other words, all the universes of the multiverse plus the spiritual dimensions. And the spiritual dimensions consist of the afterlife, or what we call the interlife, in other words, where you go between lives, and other spiritual dimensions within which are based the intelligent civilization of souls and spiritual beings and a defined source or God. Now, that clump there of the spiritual dimensions has been kept out of science since 3500 BC, when the Sumerians, astronomers, first said that what a universe is a discrete organic creation of time, energy, space, and matter. In other words, the universe encompasses all time, energy, space, and matter. But we're not going to bother about the intelligent civilization of souls, spiritual beings, the afterlife, God. All of that we're going to put in a really fuzzy ball that we call religion, that we call belief, and we have a bunch of guys in funny hats that make you on Sunday jump up and down and do all kind of crazy things around. But it turns out that the Omniverse is as scientific as the universe. In other words, we've been studying the universe, and now string theory, since William James came up with the multiverse in 1895, has been working overtime on super defining the multiverse, which is the totality of all universes encompassing all time, energy, space, and matter. But guess what? There's a huge amount of intelligence, life, creativity, and entities that are outside time, energy, space, and matter. And that's in the spiritual dimensions in terms of the intelligent community of souls, spiritual beings, and source. And so that entire thing, which the Anunnaki, these are manipulatory, predatory, occupying ETs that are part of an ET matrix that has been occupying us from anywhere from between 200,000 and 1 million years. They came in and they said, we're going to take this, we're going to package it, and that's going to be religion, government, money, and God. And we're going to control that so that they worship us. So that's why it's all fuzzy around there. However, what the Omniverse does is that now what we have is we have both legal evidence, which is testimony, documentary evidence, and physical evidence. We have scientific evidence, which are uniform observational laboratory protocols and replicable results. And we now have things like multiple cases of hypnotic regression under standard uniform laboratory protocols of soul memories of the interlife, which is a perfectly standard scientific database on which to base our understanding of the structure, regularities, and dynamics of the spiritual dimensions, which are the interlife, of the spiritual beings, which are a different category. They're a little bit different than the souls that we're part of, and of the original source. And because it turns out that we've been looking at the tail and thinking that it was the dog. In other words, the dog wags the tail. We've been saying, oh, the universe and the multiverse are the dog, and that's what science says. It's the be-all and the end-all. But in fact, it is, and we can prove this scientifically now, to certain levels of more probably than not. You know, it's not beyond a reasonable doubt, like when you go to execute a person in a criminal case in a jurisdiction where there's a death penalty, you want beyond a reasonable doubt. Right now, we're still at kind of the civil level of liability, which is more probably than not. But we can prove that more probably than not, it is the combination of Source God, the spiritual beings, and the collective of all of us souls. Our souls now, we know through replicable, observational, laboratory protocol-derived knowledge, are holographic fragments of Source. And the basic principle of a hologram is that the whole is contained in each part of the hologram. And that what that means is that each of our souls is, let me emphasize, is God. It's not that we're like a little, you know, corner of God. We are God. Each of us is God. So that the collective of human souls, plus the spiritual beings, plus Source and God, is what creates the tail, i.e., our universe and all of the universes of the multiverse. And the universes of the multiverse have a mission. They're kind of our, I would call it, our theme park that we create so we have a place to incarnate in for soul development and for creativity. And it's all very simple. It's kind of like E equals MC squared. It's the same. I watched a beautiful documentary on the life of Albert Einstein last night, and it described his getting to. He was talking to his wife, and it described his getting to that really simple E equals MC squared. Well, the equivalent now is the omniverse equals the multiverse plus the spiritual dimensions.
Let me jump in here for a second, Alfred. The basic status quo when it came to science, up until the the today now, is that there's only one universe. That's it. It's it. There's nothing else out.
No.
Well, hold on. Let me finish.
Yeah.
Let me finish really quick.
Okay.
And if I go, Jimmy Church, I go out to the edge of everything, right? Our universe. I go out to the edge and I get to the end and I poke my head out. I know what I'm going to see. I'm going to see another universe, right? If I look down, if I look up, there's going to be another one. There's going to be another one. And that is where we are at today. This single universe thing is completely thrown out. And it's almost impossible to look at things in those terms. Now, I want to back up to what you said there about the omniverse overlapping to the multiverse. The same omniverse concept here, interdimensionality, everything, all beings, afterlife, everything is as one. And now, does that duplicate over through ET and then to other universes through the multiverse?
I'm not quite sure I understand the totality of your question, but let me see if I can answer this way, and then if you want more clarification, please ask me. If we look at our universe is a holographic universe. And what that means, if you took out your credit card, let's say if you took out your credit card or your ATM card, your bank card, that has a hologram in it that's flat, right? That's exactly, that flatness is exactly what our universe looks like from the outside. Now, if you're inside the hologram, like if you're inside the hologram on your credit card, you're going to see all those little sparklies, right? I mean, they vary. Some of them have their logos, some have different things. So if you're inside that hologram, you're going to see, you're going to be right next to this three-dimensional huge logo of Bank of America or Wells Fargo or something like that, right? The same thing here. If you're on the outside of our universe, what you're going to see is this flat kind of strip. However, if you go inside of it, what you're going to see is what we see when we go out to the night sky, or when we see photographs of the Milky Way or of the deep space from the Hubble, of all these galaxies, or photographs of Mars, photographs of the solar system, because we're inside the hologram. Now, these universes, one of the hypotheses that we discovered in conjunction with writing this book, and I should add this, that Oxford University was involved in this, because what happened is that this book was born in July 2009 in Barcelona, Spain, where I was being interviewed by Ima Sanchez, who is a veteran reporter there for her newspaper, La Vanguardia, which is the second largest newspaper in Spain. It'd be like the Washington Post or the LA Times, you know, compared to the New York Times. And they have like the complete back page of the first section, which they devote to visiting firemen or firewomen, you know, like if an author comes through town, right?
Right.
So we were there for the first European Exopolitics Summit in Barcelona. And they said, hey, and I was doing a book tour of Spain for the Spanish edition of my book, Exopolitics. So they said, you know, Alfred, come on over. Ima Sanchez wants to interview you. And, you know, this is like the back page of the second largest newspaper in Spain.
Yeah,
so
we, Contra.
Yeah, exactly. And so I sit there, and she is really good. She really knows how to do it. And toward the end of the interview, she puts down her pen, you know, and we talked about life on Mars. We talked about all this stuff. And she puts down her pen and she says very quietly, Alfred, tell me, how does the universe function? What's the relationship between extraterrestrials and reincarnation? You know, and that question really set me back, because I saw that she was getting at the key questions that many philosophers, psychologists, scientists, religious seekers, contactees, all of this have been trying to tell us over the ages. It's not just UFOs. It's just not ETs. It's just not reincarnation. It's all together in a single dimensional ecology of systems. We have souls in the afterlife. You know, you go through a whole process there. We describe that in the book. It's not a matter of religion or faith there. We take all of the scientific studies and we put it in there. You get the most scientific, replicable view of what the interlife is. At a certain point, you're given a choice of a life. You can actually sample lives, like on TV screens, and you can say, hey, I'll take that one. I'll try out Alfred, okay? And so at a certain point, I consult with my guides, and they say, hey, you're going to be Alfred, or you're going to be Jimmy, or you're going to be XYZ. And then when you're ready, in a normal birth, you go through an interdimensional portal between the afterlife, and you teleport. The two key technologies in the Omniverse for intelligent civilizations are telepathy and teleportation and time travel. Now, time travel and teleportation are kind of interchangeable, because teleportation is time travel along a single timeline. That is, you don't change nows, but time travel is teleportation across timelines. In other words, I will teleport from 1895 to 2015. And so I'll
Let me ask you really quick. We're going to be up against a break. I want to address what you had just said. When you go to the afterlife and you're choosing, or you're making a choice, or you're moving on, is that instantaneous? Is there a time delay? Is it the next day, the next year, the next minute?
Really good question. The interlife or the afterlife is non-local and non-temporal, so you're outside of time. Time is a dimension of this created universe that we're in, and it's a universe of time, energy, space, and matter. Time is a dimension like space. In other words, we're inside, and we can be located by height, width, depth, and time. I'm located in Vancouver, Canada at 22:54 p.m. Pacific time on Friday, November 27, 2015. That's my time-space coordinates.
Now, we're going to be up against a break here in just a second, so I want to get into this as quick as possible. You were saying that telepathy and time travel and teleportation were similar but different. Can you clarify that?
No. I.e., teleportation and time travel are in a way the same technology. It's just that in time travel you're crossing timelines, and in teleportation you're just going from point A to point B. Okay, and what happens is that when you incarnate, you go through an interdimensional portal between the interlife and our universe. You've been given, or you pick up the time-space coordinates of your mother in a normal birth. You come up right up next to her womb about 3 months prior to birth, and then you integrate into the fetus in her womb.
Gotcha. And
that way you and she become entrained in terms of heartbeat, in terms of organism, in terms of, because your mother could have been your business partner in a private life, in a prior life. So there are all these complex things, and you've been put together for soul development, and the purposes of the universes, or one of the purposes, is for soul development. Now, we souls.
Hold it right there. That's okay. A perfect spot to take a break. Let's do that. Tonight, our guest is Alfred Webre. His new book is The Omniverse. And I'm going to ask Alfred when we come back, this law of the universe, of the Omniverse, does it apply to ET and all other species out there? I guess that is the question we all have. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Coast to Coast AM. More with Alfred Webre right after this short break. Stay with us. Welcome back to Coast AM. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter right now, @JChurchRadio. It's live to my left. I'm looking at the feed. Any questions for myself or Alfred Webre, I will see them in real time. Now, his new book is The Omniverse, and that's what we're discussing. And Alfred, right before the break, I wanted to ask you about, that universal law of the afterlife and how it applies to ET. But before you get to that, we were talking about the United Nations and how we should have an ambassador, if you will, an exopolitical ambassador. if ET lands, let's just say the proverbial White House landing and the ramp comes down, who would you suggest that to stand at the end of that red carpet and greet ET for planet Earth?
Well, that's a really good question, and it's kind of early in the program, but I know somebody who's running on that platform.
Andrew Bishago?
Yeah.
I can almost see that. That's who comes to mind first for you. That's the name that you would put in the hat.
Yeah, I mean, if I've known Andy for, I mean, this is just to have kind of a truth in lending here, okay? I've known Andy Bishago personally for 15 years. He's a man of consummate integrity. He's known me since 1971, which is over 40 years. That's when he first saw my book, Exopolitics, as a childhood participant in DARPA CIA's Project Pegasus. And I've been working with him now for 15 years. I've been helping him develop many of his platforms, one of which is the Mars Treaty. And that is that we all know, and in fact, you can go to chapter 3 on the Omniverse and you will see both legal evidence and scientific evidence that there is intelligent life on Mars, that that the Martian civilization and the US civilization have been interacting with each other for at least 30 years, that Martians have been coming here, members of the Martian Astronaut Corps and others have been coming here since at least 1970. Andy Bishago met some Martian astronauts in 1970 on an East Coast base together with his father. And conversely, the US has had bases, and some people say much more nefarious things, under the Mars Colony Corporation, which has been under the kind of CEO-ship of a guy who flunked out of Yale when he was a sophomore, and I was a freshman, called Richard B. Cheney, who reportedly turned many of the Mars colony, which recruited people here on Earth to go there under, hey, come on, do this for God and country, and they get there to Mars and they're slave labor. So Andy and I have developed the Mars Treaty, which is a UN treaty, which is in conformity with the UN Outer Space Treaty of 1967 and the Mars Treaty of 1969, which is between two sovereign planets, the civilizations on Mars and the civilizations on Earth. And so we don't have the US Department of Defense and the matrix powers of the earthly bankers and other bloodlines trying to colonize Mars and use it as a jumping off place and slave labor place for their own enrichment. And that's what Andy's going to do. His being elected president, I think you'll have, number one, release of planetary teleportation, which is what we have to do. We have to get beyond fossil fuels, which are polluting, which cause oil wars, which take up tremendous land space in terms of the highways, the overpasses in cities have killed cities. Just read Jane Jacobs and she'll tell you all about it. And what we have, he used to go as a childhood participant to a DARPA forward time base in the year 2045. And by that time, teleportation was commonplace, so that, you decide you're in New York, you're in San Francisco, you're in wherever, and you want to have lunch in Paris or you want to have lunch in Moscow. I mean, it's, we're going to be beyond the Cold War and beyond this bankers wars by then. and we'll have advanced planetary status, which is teleportation, which is most of the Omniverse works on telepathy and teleportation. And now you have the young kids with they have the 5-strand DNA coming in, and everybody's getting more telepathic. So we're starting to get there. And energy, free energy, Andy's going to release all of the free energy that is now in sequestered projects, all sorts of medical cures. And he's even talked about making me ambassador to the UN. So guess what? I'm committed to implementing and signing that Mars Treaty as ambassador to the UN.
For more on Andy Basiago, you can go to his website and check it out, and all of those questions that are there. Certainly, if Andy makes it all the way to the White House, Alfred, there's no doubt about it. I think the question of disclosure would be answered.
Yeah. People can go to andy2016.com. And I just want to say one final thing, because I know that this program is about the Omniverse, and I really want to focus on that, but this is really important. It's a really important step for humanity not to find itself on some kind of trumped up charges before a universe court, but rather to find a smooth entry into universe society. And that is, Andy's a person that CIA, reportedly, DARPA CIA time travel pre-identified him as a future US president. So I think this is in the cards. So if you're searching around and you're really not happy with what you see, I mean, I call them the trumped up candidates, right, who are out there, vote for Andy Basiago. Right now it's going to be a write-in campaign. And so anyway, that's the end of my unpaid political endorsement.
Yeah, Andrew's a great guy. He's been a guest on Coast to Coast many times, and of course over on my show, Two Faded Black. He's a great guy, and he's steadfast, and you can't crack Andy for sure. Now, before the break, Alfred, I wanted to ask you, do the universal laws of the afterlife, do they apply to ET?
Absolutely, because you see, to the other ETs, you're an ET, and this is the deal, okay? This is the deal. As souls, we're based in a non-local, non-temporal base. Both you and I, Jimmy, at this point, our souls are in our respective avatars. Remember that movie Avatar?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Alfred and Jimmy are avatars, and it's our souls that are animating our avatars. We use our avatars to navigate the three-dimensional temporal dimension of space, of Earth space. In other words, Alfred and Jimmy are avatars with their biological avatars. And what the science shows is that our souls can, quote, simultaneously be leading multiple lives. In other words, we can be leading lives right here on Earth as Alfred and Jimmy, and, quote, simultaneously at the same time, you're off in some other constellation in this universe or in some other galaxy, and you're in an avian planet, as an advanced avian intelligence, because that's what you want. And another part of your soul, because not the entirety of the soul is involved. In other words, reincarnation and incarnation is not the whole activity of a soul. A lot of what we do is involved in the creation, maintenance, design of the universes and all of the galaxies and planets and solar systems therein. So maybe you're deployed up in some galaxy someplace and you're adjusting time in there, or you're helping develop a new species, or you're, you know, moving along a life-bearing planet that is in a certain stage where animal life is just developing at that point. We're in a really complex, multidimensional, multi-activity, multitasking. We are owning right now, part of our multitasking is being Jimmy and Alfred in the Earth dimension, but we're involved in a lot of things at the same time. So that all, quote, extraterrestrials are in fact souls that are inside avatars of Pleiadians, of reptilians, of Orion Greys, of Greys. There are 150 species of Greys that are known now, of the Syrians, you know, of all of the visitors that we have here. All of them are avatars, because the universes are like theme parks for avatars, and they're theme parks for souls. And our souls say, hey, you're getting deployed to theme park universe number XYZ, right? And you're going to be this particular type of ET, and this is what you need right now, because you need to work on this aspect of, you know, your development. And we know that you can handle 2 or 3 lives at once. So your guys get together and this is what you do. So that's what the data shows.
Well, what about, Alfred, that fuzzy ball of religion that we went through here? Is ET going through that same religious question and lumping everything together into that fuzziness?
Well, the answer again is yes and no, because remember that we're in a very special sector of the universe here. We're in an impacted planet, and our planet has been under universe quarantine for about 250,000 years. The spiritual circuits have been shut off, and that has been done because a whole group of what we can call them rogue ETs, ranging from the Anunnaki to the Draco reptilians to the Orion Greys, some people say came in here from Andromeda, made deals with the planetary leadership here and the spiritual leadership of this sector of the galaxy or universe under historical figures whose names resonate in our literature, like Lucifer and Satan. Those are historical names for Star Wars events that took place in the distant past, long, long ago, but they took place here. And so we're still in the aftermath of that. So we're in an impacted sector. And so it's actually to our advantage, because incarnating on Earth, it's like, you know, think of if you're applying to university and you have the choice of Harvard, MIT, and then community college, and you get into Harvard or MIT. Now, that's nothing against community college, okay?
Right, got you.
Comma. However, incarnating on Earth is actually a great privilege, because starseeds or aware souls, like the majority of the listeners to this program are here because our mission is to help elevate this planet and bring about its reintegration into universe society after 200,000 to 1 million years of our being in quarantine because of this rebellion, which not only included ETs, comma, it also includes a machine-based and plasma-based intelligence that we call artificial intelligence. And that's a mix that is just coming into exopolitics now. that through a whole number of scholars like Harold Krausweiler and a whole community, we have just completed a whole series of symposia on the exopolitical impacts of artificial intelligence. People who want to follow that can go to our websites, exopolitics.com or newsinsideout.com. And that's kind of a newcomer to the exopolitical mix. But we're here at a very exciting cosmic time. And just remember, the first letter of my last name is W, and this might be corny, but I'll say it anyway. Just always think of W. There's a W. There's you, the avatar, and then there's you, the soul. And you have to almost have double vision so that you know how to distinguish between what Alfred's doing and what the soul of Alfred's doing. And that's why many cultures say, Namaste, I salute the God within you, because everyone that you encounter is a holographic fragment of God and is God inside that avatar.
Well, for all of the intelligent civilizations that you refer to that were created by souls in the afterlife, which is easy enough to grasp onto, but what about non-intelligent or negative civilizations that are here for bad intentions and not here for our own good?
Well, they are intelligent. And you see, the equation and the design in this universe is free will. And that's where the design criterion in this universe, in this particular universe, as a free will universe, was to throw the dice. Okay, you've got free will. You want to do what occurred in this event. Some people call it the Lucifer Rebellion 200,000 years ago plus, and say, oh, there is no God. This is one of the people that was in charge from a spiritual point of view. He was fairly high up in terms of running, affairs in this segment at a spiritual level, and then on down into the time, space, energy, and matter level with all the creatures like us in there, like avatars in there, and saying, God doesn't exist. God is a myth. God is a creation. God is a meme that they're using to control you. And that's what began with the Lucifer Rebellion, and that was free will. And then they sucked in a whole bunch of civilizations ranging from the Anunnaki to the Dracos to the Orion Greys, and then all those people came in, and they, we had Star Wars, if you look at our solar system alone.
Well, I need to jump in, Alfred. We're against a break here. This is Coast to Coast AM. We'll finish that thought when we come back. Tonight, Alfred Webre is our guest. His book is The Omniverse, and we're going to jump into the existence of a secret base on Mars. This is Coast to Coast AM. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We'll be back right after this. Stay with us. Welcome back to Coast AM. Our guest tonight is Alfred Webre. And Alfred, the colony on Mars, is that where that missing $1.5 trillion went?
A good part of it could have gone to the secret space program, which includes the colonization of Mars, and contrary to the terms of the 1967 Outer Space Conference, I like to say that the secret strategy of the U.S. government is to make Mars the 51st state. And to, in the same way that it took over Puerto Rico in the Spanish-American War, well, through a stealth strategy, it's colonizing the whole planet, which is filled full of minerals and other riches. And that's what it's doing, and that's its secret strategy. But that's against the Outer Space Treaty. And so that's why, among the many other reasons, Andy Basiago and the up to 10 Mars experiencers that I've personally interacted with, all of their stories line up and are congruent. That the U.S. once again is a rogue in international and outer space law and attempting to incorporate a planet as a covert 51st state. That is my kind of conclusion as an international war crimes judge who's adjudged the Bush administration, George W. Bush, Richard B. Cheney, Donald H. Rumsfeld, and their lawyers as war criminals, along with Tony Blair. And I think that they're doing the same strategy that they tried to do in Iraq. They're doing it with Mars, which is to colonize it and to incorporate it as 51st state, which is even more than they did with Iraq.
What do you make about the prevalence of the photography that is all over the internet of different anomalies on the surface of Mars, not only from curiosity, but all of the images that are presented? What do you think? Is that actual evidence?
Yes, it's what we call in the law documentary evidence, and in this case, we have documentary evidence that's backed up by eyewitness experiencers who are interpreting that documentary evidence, and by that means we have the Mars Anomaly Research Society, Mars. You can go to projectmars.net. And that was founded by Mars experiencer Andrew D. Bishago. I happen to be the chairman of the board of advisors. And there's a whole cadre of photo analysts worldwide who are looking at all of the Mars rover photographs. NASA uses 7 different technologies to try and make it very, very difficult for the civilian population on Earth to take those photographs and to get into it and really see the different species of humans on there, the different animals, the different configurations. Mars is an organized, teeming planet. It's teeming with life. It's highly populated with intelligent life. It's got its own social system. It's got, if you believe all of the different whistleblowers, it's got different intelligent civilizations there. Some of them are humans around the equatorial region. Some of them may be reptilian and insectoid up at the polar regions. We have whole battalions of Marines there that are deployed to the Mars Colony Corporation, which are guarding the colonies. And we've had, we know, documented through whistleblowers Andy Bishago, Bernard Mendez, and many others. We have a list of about 20 people that we know were part of the 1980 CIA Mars jump room project, whereby a sort of a jump room or modified teleportation technology that was gifted to the U.S. Department of Defense by a specific species of greys was used to help sort of jumpstart, not to use a pun intended, the U.S. presence on Mars. And included in there was one young Barry Soetoro. He's a gentleman who currently occupies the U.S. White House under his current name, named Barack Obama Paren Jr., which he changed his name from Barack Munaid Obama, Barack Munaid Ubaya, in October of 1982 at a British Columbia court here, not too far here from Vancouver. Barack Munaid Ubaid was the CIA name that they had been given to him as a CIA operative when he changed it from Barry Soetoro. And then they gave him the name Barack Obama, which was the name of a middle-level Kenyan civil servant named Barack Obama Sr., who they had set up in a meeting in Hawaii around 1971 with the supposed mother of Barack Obama, who was kind of his CIA handler, and he agreed to be the father. But then in 1982, the CIA killed him in an assassination auto accident, and that's when they gave him the orders to come here to BC and change his name, because he was running stuff for the CIA, including being a Mars experiencer. And so we have multiple witnesses, all congruent, of Barack Obama being part of the Mars program. Barack Obama on the surface of Mars. What he said in his first time there, he said, quote, "Oh, now we're here." And what happened is that I was a judge in Kuala Lumpur on the Kuala Lumpur War Crimes Tribunal, hearing the case versus the Bush and Tony Blair administrations for the illegal invasion of Iraq, when what happened is that I had published, I had broken the story of this in the Examiner as an Examiner reporter, and they brought out the public relations director of the U.S. National Security Council, which includes the president, the vice president, secretary of defense, and the secretary of state, to deny that story. And all of my information was taken down from Examiner. I was the highest read political reporter on Examiner, and the orders came down from the White House to take those stories down. And that's contrary to the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. And I say that as a man who has taught law at Yale University and have taught the Bill of Rights at the University of Texas. So that was done in direct violation of my constitutional rights as a journalist by that entity.
Alfred, let me jump in for a second really quick before we run out of time. The technology for the jump room and for transportation to Mars and to establish a colony there, where did that technology come from? Did we get help from ET at that point?
Yeah, that was gifted to the U.S. according to multiple whistleblowers on the project, including Bernard Mendez, who was a presidential level advisor. That was gifted by a specific species of gray ETs to the U.S. government to jumpstart the U.S. Presence and colonization of the solar system.
And what did you make of, we've been talking about Andrew Basiago all night. It was kind of an accident, but I appreciate that. When the revealing from NASA a few weeks ago about the presence of water on Mars and flowing water and where it's coming from, well, Andrew talked about that a long time ago. Andrew talked about blue skies on Mars a long time ago, that the skies weren't red. And it seems like everything that Andrew talked about in the past is now something that NASA freely talks about, and they've quit altering. I think, it's my opinion, they've quit changing the colors in their photographs. And when we look at the real colors, it looks like an atmosphere. What is next? Is NASA going to say that we don't need spacesuits, like Andrew said? There's plenty of oxygen there, and we'll be able to walk around freely on Mars? Is that what is coming next?
Well, they're doing that kind of drip strategy, no pun intended, with the water. And so what their strategy is, what NASA's
strategy?
Yeah, disclosure strategy, to put kind of a nice word on it, is, I can only guess it, certainly what we're trying to do tonight and what we're doing in the book, The Omniverse, and what all of the whistleblowers are doing and what you guys at Coast to Coast are doing, is pushing the envelope as much as we can. Because we have a man in the White House who's been on Mars, and he's putting out the word and reports and say that they have no definitive evidence that extraterrestrials exist. So the United States and the Americans are being put in an advanced state of cognitive dissonance. It's like the US government wants to drive its population crazy. And so what we say is that that time has ended, and now in 2016, we have to have a change, a regime change, and we have to have extraterrestrial disclosure, regime change in the US and extraterrestrial disclosure. That's what I think has to happen for the realization that we're in a populated, organized omniverse to finally come. Because if you have a guy in the White House who's been on these projects since for over 20 years, since 1980, with multiple witnesses, you know the guy now is a pathological liar, and he's probably a mole.
Well, Andy, Alfred, if you think about and you look back at the way Barack was on the Jimmy Kimmel show, he almost seemed uncomfortable, but at the same time comfortable. It was weird, and he didn't have a problem stating his opinions on the presence of ET. And
they say that Barack won't do it because they'll kill him if he does. I think that's baloney. I think that that's baloney, because all of us are out here, and it's us whistleblowers and us reporters who have risked our lives. And if we go out and try to say there's life on Mars, it's us who risk getting killed. Because I remember being in Hawaii at the ET conference there in 2005 and getting a call from my client, Andy Bashago, saying the Bush White House just called me and said that if I continue with my revelations about time travel, they cannot guarantee my safety. And that was a man sent face to face from the George W. Bush White House. Okay?
How do you think, well, Alfred, how do you think disclosure is ultimately going to happen?
It's going to happen through power and control. Look what Vladimir Putin just did in Syria with ISIS. You had that shill, that double agent in the White House who has been modeling ISIS in Syria, who has been telling the pilots, the US pilots, to go to the edge of the desert and drop their bombs there. It was a lot of baloney. And finally, Putin got fed up and he came in and he is knocking out ISIS, and ISIS is going to be toast in about a month, at least the first level of it.
But that's not the question.
No. You asked, how is disclosure going to happen? And the answer is through elevation of consciousness by humans and through regime change. What's going to happen is that all of these Rothschild, Rockefeller team, the team, all of the Bushes, all of the Camerons, all of the Trudeaus, all of the Obamas, that whole farm team, that Rockefeller, Rothschild farm team that's in now, that knows nothing but to give out the party line that, oh, we don't have the evidence for ET. Well, they can buy my book. And today, we still have a few minutes in Black Friday. It's on sale for half price at Amazon. So I urge people to go to Amazon and buy the Omniverse. You can get it either in Kindle or you can get it in soft cover. It's on half price on Black Friday. Okay, so what I'm telling you, it's going to be regime change and elevation of consciousness. The regime change is the change of the farm team of the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. They're the guys who place all these Obamas, all the Camerons, all the Trudeaus, all these, President Hollandes, who know nothing but to toe a party line that is nonsensical, that is driving their population into cognitive dissonance and insanity. That's what's going to bring disclosure.
But won't ET interfere here with all of the negativity? You know, aren't they here to project a positive future? And
yeah. And see, ET is here to support the human plan. And because Earth is a planet of humans, and that's a given. Earth is not a planet for ETs. The plan is not to have ETs land and they're like Big Brother and we become like the savages who want to have the latest trinkets. That's not the picture. The picture is the human plan. And so advanced upper dimensional ethical ET works behind the scenes along with the intelligent civilization of souls that comes to you in dreams and helps elevate your consciousness and shows you the right thing to do and the right way to go so that we can move these guys, these kind of shills who are in power now, who are part of a power control matrix that is a leftover from the Anunnaki occupation. That's why they all wear the same kind of hats. You know, the Pope's hat looks like the king's crown. That looks like the Anunnaki's things if you go back to their pictures. That's, you know, that game that we've been playing for 200,000 years, that chapter is over. We've closed that chapter. We're now in a new chapter. It's called the Omniverse chapter, and we're entering it. And we're entering the chapter of newly conscious citizens of the organized and highly populated universe and informed humans. This is a human planet. We have to do it on our own. And so right now we need a new farm team. We need to kick out the farm team of the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. These are guys like Obama. They're guys like Hillary Clinton. They're guys like Donald Trump who are, you know, managed news. All they're doing is bring the same thing. They want war, disease, crime, and poverty, and that's what they want. And so we're kicking them out. And the ETs are helping us behind the scenes. It's all behind the scenes. There is going to be no landing on the White House lawn. That's not the plan.
Alfred, we are up against it. Thank you so much, Alfred Webre. And the new book is The Omniverse, Transdimensional Intelligence, Time Travel, the Afterlife, and the Secret Colony on Mars. All of the information is there. His website is www.exopolitics.com. Thank you so much. Great conversation, Alfred. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We're going to be taking your calls for the rest of the evening. This is Coast to Coast AM.